I'm calling in the creator to the CEO who crave creating community and cash to create it like a boss. With me, Katrina Julia, as your host, multi-passionate entrepreneur, creator, and CEO who has walked from fear to faith, self-hate to love, corporate to calling, and continues to, with experience in 7+ industries, 7,000+ creators and startups, 2 creators to Fortune 500 brands, including Google, NBC, Victoria's Secret, and more. If you are ready to create it like never before in faith, wellness, wealth, marketing, business, travel, and more, this is the show for you. If this is your time to have freedom in all forms as you create it like a boss, let's create it.
Welcome back to. It took me 30 years to learn to live within my means. Here's what changed. How I finally learned to live within my means after 30 plus years of overspending. For years, I was the one behind the scenes, helping others scale from 6 to 8 figures, catching millions in fraud, waste, and abuse, armed with a CPA and an MBA and more certifications than I can count, or more degrees than a thermometer, like Pastor Michael Todd likes to say, adding 10 to 25 million, yes, million a year to brands. But none of that mattered. None of the external evidence was ever enough to have me feel like I was worthy until I really started to believe that fully and completely from the inside out. Once I started to embody that step by step and started to receive and fill my cup, being a priceless and precious human. So when I earned more in that process and from a lot of habits and different things that I observed growing up, or belief systems or things that people spoke over me, I spent more. So it was a byproduct of being stuck in loops with scarcity, with leaning on debt, with overspending to prove to them or they that I was worthy by showing up externally in ways that didn't even matter to me. And even when I knew better, I lived below my truth, not my means. The hard truth, I was leaking. And even when I worked in corporate, I realized after a year of having my first 6-figure role, I was overspending by 25%. That was the first time I took Financial Peace University. I didn't fully respect money. I really didn't budget. It was like this huge block or this huge fear or this belief that I could do it for others. I could budget for others. I could help them make 6 to 8 figures. I could create value and ROI for them, but I couldn't do it for me, or I wasn't worthy, or I wasn't capable. Step by step, I learned how to manage money through a painful process, through painful lessons, not only for myself, that ripple affected back into my family. And the ripple effects of my money mess have not been easy, to say the least. And if this is your journey, no, you are not alone. I think so many people don't talk about the transitions of the process from corporate to calling, or from money mess to message, or the pain in the process of transformation. I was pouring money, time, and energy into things like, $2,000 to $3,000 month rent in Atlanta, telling myself that's just how it is. Or having, my 8th car before I was 30, and at one point having an $800 a month car note. Yes, $800 plus $200 a month in insurance, and that wasn't counting gas or parking. $300 a month phone bills, which I talked about in the last episode. $190 a month storage units that went from $60 or $80 to a $190 within less than a year. $5,000 plus in annual transit costs with shifting my travels really too quickly, even as I traveled full time since 2020. So yes, I would save money on stays compared to Atlanta rent, but I blindly didn't realize where I was continuing to create chaos. The stays were, so the 2,000 plus a month rent was, once, or 1,500 to 2 grand, not including living expenses, was before I traveled full time. And then, even then, with the transitions and the moves, oftentimes my average was between 800 to 1,000. And I helped everyone else build in line, in alignment, budgets, systems, but I struggled along the way. And so, show me the money. What shifted? I hit multiple breaking points along the way, multiple pain points. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. At some points, when I share more and more pieces of the story, like, it's going to astound you that even I kept showing up, I kept creating in the midst of chaos and clutter, and that even with an MBA and CPA and all these results and different things, that I fully got to experience the ramifications, the consequences, the pain, the process, beyond what I ever imagined and beyond what makes external sense. Yet at the same time, because of my faith, because of my shifts in peace, my shifts in abundance, there are times where I stayed supernaturally calm and peaceful and focused that even astounded me. That before I would have literally lost my bleep for a lot less. None of this was or is overnight. It started with reducing expenses back in 2011, living carless in Atlanta, choosing to travel overseas in 2020 because it was both cheaper and more adventurous. Those are just some key pivotal points. And from some of my breaking points in 2025, I chose to create differently in countless ways and build differently and move differently. And I'm setting that up even more powerfully and stably and slowly into 2026. I've analyzed every habit, every energetic shift, every spiritual thought, every mindset, and every dollar impact. So if it's like, Luda says, when I move, you move, just like that. I think about, when I move, how is the money moving? I think about, like, if I do this or do that, like, what's the ripple effect? What's the domino effect? Both in creating wealth and in creating chaos or clutter in cash. So some of the examples of the money mess to the message in the last month alone, and a lot of this I've configured both with divine downloads and with using my Creator Cash AI agent, which you can dive deep into a free preview in my Preview to Creator School with the link in the show notes, as well as on my Miss Creator Gumroad, as well as in the episode on my AI agents and 100 ways I use AI, and on the blog at fitlifecreation.com/blog. So my phone ended up hitting an average of $300 a month once I shifted to AT&T circa 2024. Through a series of steps, I redeemed a 750 plus credit that I talk about in detail in the last episode from AT&T, and $516 actual in a prepaid card when I moved to T-Mobile within the last month. My storage was up to $190 a month, even though it was a tiny storage in a AC unit in public storage in Atlanta. It started at like 60 or 90 a month, and then they increased the rate. Thanks to an amazing friend, Silvana, she and her husband, I gave them several different things that they wanted that was in my storage that I was going to donate to Salvation Army before I left, but they ended up not being available. So as the favor with all I gave, they moved the unit. It's now $42 a month. Transit, I realized how my moves between countries, the airfare, the taxis, the buses were adding up, and it went up to the range of $3,000 to $5,000 a year. And now it's less than 200 average a month. With, for example, this month, it's only about $30-$40. Last month, it was only $30 for a bus from Ecuador to Peru. So I'm way more mindful. So even though it's 200 average, like I said, last month it was 30, and then this month it's going to be maybe 40 or 50 with Ubers in Lima. And then stays, I talked about what it was in Atlanta. Then it was like 800 to 1,000 a month. Now it's less than 500 a month. Like this month, I spent $280 for a month-long stay in a beautiful private room, private bathroom, and co-living slash co-working space in Mancora, Peru. And the same when I'm shifting to Lima. So I'm way more aligned and way more aware and very, very grounded in that if and when I shift and increase and give myself permission to increase in living expenses, first is other priorities like savings, like investing, like paying off debt. That's a whole nother story. Yes, I'm currently in 6 figures of debt, including student loans, because again, that's part of the consequence, part of the ramifications of the painful process and the painful transitions. I've had no car payment since circa 2019 or 2018. I don't drink or eat sweets, both for alignment and both for savings. That's over 1,200 a month easily in savings. So all that adds up, you guys, to over 25K. So within Q4, I filed the claims I mentioned, had the storage units switched, slowed down my travels, and used ChatGPT to map out staying in the same country for at least 3 months aligned with the visas in 2026. And I already started that alignment and that habit in 2025. So I stayed in Ecuador 3 months. I'm staying in Peru 3 months. So I've radically shifted things, radically. I've stayed in places longer and moved less and or gotten hosted stays. And it isn't solely about the money. It's about the feeling that like you have more than enough and it's safe to be slower. I used to always be so fast to move, to shift, to pivot, and like really, really being grounded and realizing where sometimes when we move too quickly, we miss things. Like even today, this morning in my surfing lesson with Mancora, I was recognizing the beginning of the lesson where I was moving too quickly, and you actually have more time than you think. And that applies to like all of areas of life. So the shift isn't simply financial, it's emotional. I finally stopped using money to soothe shame. That was a lot of my shopping sprees in my 20s, creating chaos to feel control, spending to prove worth, defaulting to debt to feel safe. Like I realized like so much of that started when I was 16, and started so much of it started from observing. So like I shared, I was in a refugee camp at 6 months. My parents immigrated from Poland and Bulgaria by the time I was 2 to South Carolina. And even at first, my parents were struggling to create things, to build things. My mom worked at the Marriott at first when I was, 2 in South Carolina. My dad worked the night shift. And then when they moved to Houston, he worked in oil and gas. But then I remember he tried to start several restaurant businesses that ended up not being successful. And my mom, attempted to coach him and counsel him on locations. But I still remember the feelings of some arguments and things around money. And then I remember periods where, my mom had a lot of stress from relying on debt. And, you don't realize the things you absorb. Our parents do the best that they can, but you don't realize, what's your quote unquote normal, the things that you absorb. And if you don't clear spiritually, mentally from your nervous system, what you can carry on from habit, from monkey see, monkey do, from shame, from, simply from scarcity, from so many things. And so I've realized more and more and more to stop leaking and start leading. My energy now, I no longer pay to prove I'm worthy. I receive because I am. I'm paid to create. I create because it's divine. I attract because I'm aligned. I earn because I own it and I'm worth it. So whether you've quote unquote built overnight success, which if you look at any overnight success, it's decades in the making or labored for decades, the truth remains. Wealth isn't measured by income alone. It's measured by alignment, by peace, by integrity, by freedom, by choice. I helped brands and creators create millions, held credentials that symbolize success, yet I still found myself broke in self-worth, not dollars. The turning point didn't come and hasn't come with a raise, with permission, with receiving more. It came when I finally started living in my means. And it's like sometimes we beat our head against the wall because I was also spoiled by being able to always get promotions, by being able to always attract money. And I thought I was doing great by quote unquote living in my means 6 months ago, or a year ago, or 2 years ago, or 3 years ago. But until I literally started to really dive deep even more, like there's always more. And I realized that so much the last month, 3 months, 6 months, that it's like certain things haven't been allowed to move forward in some degrees. And I recognize where the creator and or creation, depending on what you believe, like I believe in God, my life verse is 1 John 4:18, perfect love drives out all fear. That I realized a lot of it was literally happening for me so that I can help others that are in this same space, or that have been in this space, or that will be in this space. Because I believe there's a lot of creators, a lot of CEOs, a lot of people that are living or will live through certain parts of the journey that I've walked through. So with that being said, I stopped paying to prove I was worthy and started receiving because I know that I am. Now, every dollar that I create, every dollar that I attract, every dollar that I respect, every choice that I make, and every layer I shed is a declaration. Creating with freedom, living in overflow, not because I'm chasing more, because I'm honoring what I have. And your abundance era begins with the same alignment. So leave a review on the show and drop your IG handle and our website so I can shout you out. And as always, remember, create, transform, and inspire because you are born to.